Good morning. Well, I just got up and it's cold, so I better light the fire. Let's get to it, eh? Got some problems here with the cords first. Well, let's just undo that. Oh my, oranges just fell over. Don't forget to like and subscribe. I do too, Frida. It's really good. Well, we'll just leave it there for a while. And I have to have a shower and wash my hair today, but not when it's so cold in here. Good morning. So, let's... Now these just rolled right off the table. Funny that they waited till right now to do it. Mhm. Well, you know what? That heater's on. It was very frosty last night. It went down to -7, I think, Celsius, which is 7 plus 7 from 32. A new day. Hey, I was thinking of reading you a story out of my book. I wrote a book, and I never published it, of course, because that would be too much like completion. Yes, it is. It's coming. I'll read to you. Oh, wait, this is not the right part. This is the... There was a other part that I put in as the beginning. So, it was... This was it, 38, page 110. This is the chapter I put at the beginning of the book. Maybe it was before this. Well, let's just read this chapter, okay? It was June 22nd, 1998, when I went down to relax in the canoe and found that the water was high and was moving quickly. I surveyed the dam in the Marshwoods Pond before returning and breaking away the last 5 feet of the dam where I parked the canoe. I hoped to lower the water level by 6 inches. I imagined that the beaver would return and block it up, but on my evaluations at 10 a.m. the next morning, the water still flowed out freely. The level of the pond was maintained. It had troubled me that not only was the water running over the entire length of the dam, but it was also filling the marshwoods beyond. I had left my writing on the computer and come to the stream complete with binoculars to check the birds, as well as with pen and paper and chair. At times, pulling my heavily laden folding chair through this was troublesome and made me question the wisdom of bringing it. But while I sat dam side and watched the sunlight sparkle on the stream of rapids as the escaping water sallied forth, carving a new path, I felt quite content to sit and relax my weary back and watch the shimmering and listen to its orchestrated babble. If it weren't for the marsh woods, perhaps I wouldn't care about the number of dams. But I cherished the winter walks through the firs. The amount of beaver stumps therein spoke volumes to me as I reflected upon them. Beavers had been here before. Perhaps they had been trapped out and the dams removed. Was this the young of the year now grown since last year and venturing forth to find new housing? The speed of the water entering our marsh led me to wonder if the great dam far upstream had been breached. The breaking of any of the 50 upstream could have caused such a flow. Through the tall grass and alder stems I could see the flicker of silver as the water spread out downstream. I got up and moved along. First I turned back and looked through the trees, perchance to find a way to the road. With a chair it wouldn't be that easy. The alders overhead were about 15 feet tall, with stems a half-inch wide. No, 1 to 2 inches wide. The grove was about 20 feet deep between the shore and the hidden dam toward the road. Wanting to go downstream to the bridge and then work my way back up to the dam, I ventured toward the road. That would be the cement bridge. I ventured toward the road, hoping to avoid walking in the water in the alders, also wanting to note where the dam was located in relation to the road. A large tamarack grew undisturbed, its fine blue-green needles soft to the touch. At the edge of the alders grew a tamarack and cedars. Their denseness caused me to wonder if I were better suited to pressing through the thick alders, which I could at least see through. I stood for a time trying to make the far-reaching decision while a warbler arrived nearby. It bore a yellow belly deepening and surrounding into 2 dark tail spots that sat like ovals under its tail. It was yellow-green above and lighter beneath. It chirped a cheep once every few seconds and came near enough to sit on a branch of alder and eye me, and then it and a twin who had arrived and made its presence known cheeped on another alder hidden to my left before they vanished. Perhaps I could just open out my chair and avoid making such far-reaching decision to go to the road and get all tangled up in the process, or to go through the alders and miss the chance to place the dam in relation to the road. More birds arrived, and I opened out my chair when I realized I couldn't go in either direction, seeing no more than 10 feet ahead in the cedar trees or through into huge leaning alders. The sun dimmed as a cloud moved over, and the song of the birds was stilled, except the thrush whose da-ta-da, da-ta-da, da-ta-da sang on. A huge truck passed, and I lost all interest in finding the road. I knew the gigantic alders leaned across my supposed path. Do you like this? This is a story I wrote long ago. Gotta do something about the way I look, eh? Alas, alack. Want me to keep reading? Good morning. I guess we should go back and check on the fire. It's kind of fun to read this. I love writing. Here's another one. Oh, you do, eh? Yeah, I'll read another chapter. Chapter 29. Cleaning up the Marshwood Pond. It did seem pretty ironic to have a beautiful pond in the woods, the length of the lowland, but be unable to canoe around in it because of the many deadfalls. I paddled over to a tangle of branches blocking a clear passageway in the dark water. I wasn't worried about the canoe tipping as I retrieved the pieces of rotting wood and tossed them behind me, where they clattered as they fell into the bottom of the craft. The water was warm. How time had changed the temperature of the water. Memories of frozen fingers and feet came to mind as I swished the peat off my fingers and reached for a long log. One end of it leaned against the base of a tree on a wide, raised stump. The moss that covered the stump partially covered the end of the log. I pulled at it, but it was rooted firmly in place, perhaps by an unbroken root that still pierced the stump into the ground. It took a while for me to give up moving it. The 15-foot-long log lay across an open area, blocking my passage. Good morning. More people are coming. Don't forget, like and subscribe. So this is about lighting the fire, but in the meantime, while I wait for the fire, I'm going to read to you from this book I wrote. I don't know. I never published it. It was a book about, I used to take my kayak or canoe at the time, and I would canoe into the marsh woods, or I would go down the stream, and then I had a parking spot where it was flooded over, and I would keep my canoe there, and then I would take it and I would cross the stream from that pond, and I would go into what had become the Marsh Woods Pond, as they had a dam all the way to the hill. They just had dammed the whole valley, the whole flatland. And they had done it right along the edge of the alders, between the alders and the meadow. And so, but they had taken in some trees, and it was very amazing because as the water was, everything was green and there were ferns, and it was all growing up amongst the new pond, in the pond. And so I would go canoeing in there. And then I found the lodge. Oh, yeah. Oh, no, this wasn't the pond that I made. This was the pond that the beavers made. That was a different pond. That was Fiddlehead Pond. So this was, and at the time, this connected Iceberg Pond all the way to the stream and all the way up. It was quite the huge affair. And it ended up killing the entire woods. But I would sit there and I would sit beside the lodge and I would listen for the beavers. Yesterday I went kayaking in the moat, and there were beavers in there that were unconcerned with me. We walked in, and as we walked down the lane, oh, I think the fire lit. As we walked down the lane, the moat road, we got to the entrance to Iceberg Pond, and there was this huge beaver. He must have been a foot across, a foot tall, and about a foot wide. I mean, he was a big beaver. And he was just on the ground, humped over, and then he heard us and he raised himself up and he sat and he kept putting his nose up in the air to smell us. But the wind was going the other way. We were downwind, I guess that's the way you say it. And he had cut down he's cut down so many of the trees in there, and this one was about this big around, and he was busy eating it up or eating the bark off it. But he had stopped and he looked at us, and we were talking, Willem and I had been talking, and I said, "Stop, Willem, look." But he had his hat on, he couldn't hear me, and so I had to pull his arm and point. And so we stopped talking and we watched him. And then after a while, it seemed like forever that he stood there and watched us, and we were just silent and watched him. And then he turned around and he walked. He didn't run, but he walked kind of quickly. They have very short legs, so they can't really go. They have to be in the water. That's why they flood everything, is because it's too dangerous to be on land for too long. And so he went and headed back to Iceberg Pond and climbed the little mound and went through and was in. And that was interesting. And so we finished walking around. There's a part where it's overflowed, so we couldn't walk all the way around the moat road. So we walked to the overflow and then we walked back, and I got in my kayak. And away I went. And as I kayaked, and it hadn't been so long, I don't think, but I went around the wind. I was holding the camera, which I just uploaded last night. I was holding the camera, and I got around past. It's almost like a rectangle. So I went from Teardrop Point, and I went straight, and then it floated around, and there was a big clump of alders pulled down into the water, or some branches. I suppose they were poplars because that's the trees beside that they'd been taking. Anyway, and they were pulled down in the water, and there was a beaver in the midst of them, and it looked like a little beaver. His head was, maybe that wide, and a pointed face, and it was that long, and it was sticking up, and then his back was out of the water, just a bit of his back, and I thought he was a young one. And he was busy, and he just ignored me, and I let the wind blow. It was quite windy, and the wind just blew me around past him. And I didn't make any noise. I tried not to move my feet because that makes water that's quite loud in the pond. Anyway, it was very interesting. And he discovered me after a while. This big long blue kayak it was no problem to him. There were other things that floated around, like Wilson, the big square styrofoam target. I had gotten him from the dump years ago. Well, he floats aimlessly. Wilson is a drifter. He just goes with the wind. Wherever the wind takes him, he's content. But sometimes he goes out the overflow, and one year he put down roots. That was something. Anyway, so the beaver was used to things floating along in the water, and so he ignored me for quite a while, and then he decided to come and investigate. And the moat is about 20 feet wide there, maybe. And so maybe he's 25, I don't know. So he would float down one side, or he would swim down one side, and if I turned my head, I could see him. I love nature, don't I? And so he would get to his far distance, and then he would do one of those turns in the water, like going down, like the swimmers do, really good swimmers, how they get to the end and they just turn around and come back. Well, first when he had seen me and he had dived. He dove. Anyway, he dove in the water, and of course when they dive in, they come up like 50 feet the other side of you. So that's what he had done. I don't think he slapped at that time, but he just went back and forth and back and forth, and then my kayak had been blown into the middle, so there was like 10 feet between me and the edge, and he just went right up. The grass is hanging down, so he just went right up through the grass and swam along, and he would slap. He slapped many times, but he wasn't worried enough to go hide. It was very interesting. Anyway, and then I kind of got stuck over on the other end, and I saw him leave. I saw him pulling sticks down into the water. I saw the stick bobbing, and then I saw him crawling out of the moat, and he was enormous. He was the same foot across and foot high, big beaver. His tail wasn't that huge, and it was kind of silvery black. It was very sleek. But when he swam and he'd come up out of the water, and his hair was all smooth back, like when you come out of the water and you're all wet. And then he went from there. We went across the moat road and in the Iceberg Pond entrance, and was gone. And I thought, wow, was this the same guy? Had he had time after Willem and I had seen him and he'd gone into the Iceberg Pond? Had he had time in our walking this way and then back that way to have come back and been contentedly eating in the moat? Or was this a second one? Anyway, I thought we had a baby in there, but maybe they just weren't that high up out of the water. Let me find. Oh, this was the beaver baffle. We did all kinds of things with these beavers. Oh yes, I remember the night that Willem came with me. That was called The Call of the Wild. Anyway, frozen floodwater falls. I tried to edit this, and I've got all these marks everywhere. Started out with the children. The beaver from the window. That was the beginning of all the beavers. Oh, but then there was this one before number one. But I'm just looking at them while you have to wait. Sorry. Should go check the fire, don't you think, since this is called a waterfall? A walk toward the great dam with Elida. Let's go for a walk, Mom, and I'll write a story about it, Elida said, holding her pen on her notebook and sitting down beside me. Her curly red hair bobbed up and down in front of her eyes as she brushed it to the side. She was still wearing her pajamas. I was busy at the computer waiting for the wood stove to warm up the house. Does that sound familiar? My neck hurt and my feet were cold. I wasn't in any mood for walking outside. I glanced out the window and saw that the trees looked whitish gray. It was below freezing. I thought about all the times that I had asked her if she wanted to go for a walk with me, and she usually said no. I had gone alone or with the other children many times, but I couldn't recall going for a walk with just Elida for a long time. Well, get dressed, I said, looking at her pajamas. You get dressed too, she responded quickly. Okay, I said, pushing my chair away from the computer. It took a while for the fire to warm the house, but it eventually did, and we left. Elida wore her entire snowsuit, a scarf around her neck, a woolen headband around her head. She was dressed far more warmly than she usually was. Let's go to the beaver dam, she said, notebook in hand, walking along the lane beside me. One, I said. Which one, the old one or the new one, I asked. Which is the old one and which is the new one, she inquired. I thought about the question I had asked and about the age of the different dams. The old one, I replied. It was a huge one up over the hill across the meadow. It was probably several years old, nestled in the deep valley. It extended across the entire flatland valley bottom, about 100 feet across. I guess the Great One Dam is what I had said. The dam was 5 feet tall at the center of the stream. My sister has since purchased that property. It's amazing. The beaver. I missed something. There were 2 beaver lodges that sat like islands in the pond. I had seen 3 beavers swimming there one day last summer. That was the Great Dam, the old beaver dam, even though I had discovered it more recently than the ones in our own stream. The dams in our stream had been built in the late summer. The beaver had dammed up the stream where it leaves the man-made rectangular-shaped pond. That is Serendipity Pond. The water had crawled over it, and I'm going to read the unedited stuff because I can't figure out where I go from here. The water had crawled over the dam until it spilled over. Further downstream, another dam had been started. That one had been longer. It was about 20 feet across. The stream had soon filled in a pond behind the dam. I had then torn down the first one so that the canoe could pass easily downstream. When the water overflowed the second dam, the beaver had moved downstream to build yet another one. He had then moved all the way to the road and built one on the other side of the bridge under the county road. 2 of these 3 dams had remained there. I turned back to Elida. The old dam is the old one that we just discovered, the great dam over the hill in Bear Valley. As we turned and went up the hill, Elida said, I want to walk all the way up the stream one day. We would have to take a lot of snacks with us. I want to see if the stream really comes out at the lake. Can we do that sometime? Sure, I replied, crossing the rail. I did that a couple years ago. This is like, she was 4 at the time I wrote this. No, she was 8. And she's much older now, so it was, 22 years ago or something. Sure, of course we never did. Sure, I replied, crossing the rail fence into the open meadow, dotted with sprawling juniper bushes. The snow crunched under our feet. It had been melting for almost a week. There was no longer 8 inches of snow, but only 3 or 4. Wow, the snow's like ice crystals now, all holding together like a chunk, I exclaimed excitedly. I remembered the igloo that we had built earlier in the week. It had gotten thinner and a bit shorter. It would be solid ice now. It would last for the season. I was glad to see how hard the snow was. It made walking much easier. Look, deer prints, I said as I pointed to the ground. A hole in the snow showed the mark of a cloven hoof. I wondered if it were a sheep print, since sheep escaped. Sheep did live close to this field. I had heard that sheep didn't like to go out in the snow, though, so it must have been made by a deer. But perhaps it was improper logic. Let's follow them, Elida said, going ahead of me. As we did, they crisscrossed with other footprints. There were lots of deer using this area. I hadn't seen any deer prints here before. We followed them between the junipers. Near the edge of the valley, there were more trees than in the meadow. A group of 8 tall cedars fashioned a cozy area. They weren't in a circle, but they lined the path, wide at times and narrow at others. A juniper bush was nestled up under one of them. There were many footprints. It appeared that many deer used this area. At the eastern edge of the trees, the prints again spread out in all directions around the bushes in the meadow. Let's not go that way. Let's follow them down here, Elida suggested, motioning down to the valley. The wind was whipping against my cheeks and chin. My eyelids were burning. I was glad to go into the woods on the steep hillside. It's fun to read, say. Do you want to hear some more? I wonder where the deer go to drink in the winter, Elida pondered aloud. Down there at the stream, I responded, realizing the larger unasked question. I added, this stream doesn't freeze because it's moving fast and because it has springs coming up from the bottom. The springs are warm like the earth. Look at the size of these, I said as I squatted down and looked at some fresh prints. They were as big as the palm of my hand. The print showed a cloven hoof with some additional indentations in the snow. These must have been made by a big buck. I continued walking parallel to the top of the hill, following the intertwining tracks. I stopped and looked through the trees to see where they led. I was hoping that I would see a deer. I had never seen one while I was walking before. I wondered how Hunter did. We were making too much noise, I guessed. The tracks wove down the hill. The refrozen snow under my feet was stiff and broke into pieces against the thick layer of leaves under it. The leaves were soft, and I was able to brace myself against the hill's steepness by stamping my feet through the layer of ice into the deep leaves. Then I didn't need to hold on to any trees or fallen branches. The snow was patchy in places. It had melted around anything that had pierced through it. Each twig of grass had caused the surrounding snow to melt, so that a ring of leaves surrounded each stick and branch. The footprints were melted so that the ground around them in the center of the so that the ground appeared in the center of the holes. I wondered what their original size was. Some looked quite large. Had they melted to look like that, or were they really so big? Others were tiny, like a fawn's print, while some were huge, like a bear's, with 4 toe marks. As we neared the bottom of the hill, we could see that tracks. I don't know if that was bears, or maybe it was a wolf. Well, if I thought it was a bear's, it must have been, because that's what I knew what those things looked like. This is a lot of stuff to read, and I guess I've lost people. People have come and gone. Let's go and check this fire, shall we? You think I should publish that book? I think it'll take a lot of work. A lot of work. Oh, look, the fire's going. Fire's burning, fire's burning. Draw near. Can you hear it? wood is wet. Oh, it's sizzling. Now it'll go higher, faster. Well, good morning, everyone. So there's a fire, all lit. Just have to shut it down. I guess I should make bread. I was going to make bread yesterday, but I didn't do it yet. I want to see what it looks like outside. That'll be fun. Bit of snow on there, a little bit on the deck. That was my door I built. Measured twice, cut once. Ha! Didn't work. Measured twice and I still got it wrong. Imagine that. But I should screw it on, or maybe I should put it on at the top and then make a small one for the bottom on the inside so that we don't get stuck if it snows on the outside. That's a good idea. Maybe I'll do that. Maybe I'll put some hinges on it. Isn't that a pretty piece of glass? Wonder if this has been watered lately. Not really. Do I water these? I've been trying to take care of my plants. Was that fun listening to my stories? Yeah, these are good. Trying to have it so that the water is in the bowl underneath it and it'll keep them wet. This plant is not a happy camper. But not everybody is happy. One day I'm going to clean that room. Here I am. Oops. Where should this one go? I don't really want to put it there without a bowl under it. These are rose petals for the rose bearers, to throw them down on the floor in front of important people that come in. Did you see that movie? It was called something America, Visiting America, or I don't remember what it was. I'm going to get my people down there. Oh, we brought these in yesterday. I've got to fill the water back up in them. I brought some in a few weeks ago, and they're really doing well upstairs. All of these need to be watered. See, I got these bowls now under them. Today is dump day again. I'll see if there's more bowls. Some of these bowls under them. I was looking for a book about the history of Canada, or about an atlas. I just wanted to see an atlas to see where Vancouver was. They've got a big flood there now. And I found these 3 books. And you know what they are? These are from my dad. This is from when he retired. In recognition of your 33 years of dedicated service to the Department of Geography and the University of Georgia, October 23rd, 1995. These were from the faculty, staff, and students at the Department of Geography. Isn't that amazing? These were my dad's retirement gift. He really loved Canada, even though he lived in Georgia. His parents were Canadian. They never renounced their citizenship. Well, I guess my grandfather had become an American because he worked down there. But my grandmother never did. She was always Canadian. And so my father was first-generation American. I was second-generation American, and then I came to Canada. And so my kids are now. Is it first generation? Or would it be like however many generations it's really been? So what are plans for today? Hey, and tell me what you thought of my book. Tell me what you think I could do with it. I mean, it needs some major editing. I suppose I should send it to somebody. Or probably do it online. Sorry, I'm swinging. It's time to go for a swing. Swinging is one of the best exercises. It uses all your muscles. I think it uses all your muscles. See, get your legs going here. Oops, something happened. Oh, Oh, I thought that was a noise from the wood stove. It's my sweetheart. Look at that. It's kicking out heat. You're welcome. Good morning. All right, folks, I'm going to go. See ya. I'm going to make